But first, I want to talk about something. So I did that episode yesterday about Jordan Peterson, and I got a lot of great response and a lot of vitriol, obviously. And it's interesting how sometimes your biggest foes or enemies, I wouldn't really call it enemies, these are just people on the internet, but can give you real insight into yourselves. Someone yesterday, a few people commented that it seemed like I had daddy issues because of my obsession with Jordan Peterson. And to be honest, that isn't that far from the truth. It's not daddy issues, but I just like to kind of explain where I'm coming from, because I know in this brave new world of internet communities, which are necessary, you know, what we have is special, but a lot of you guys don't know. You only know me from the live feed, which I try to be as authentic in as possible, or just the last couple years. Just to give you a little backstory about why I was so drawn to the dude and why I felt so compelled to criticize him. And maybe it'll make more sense to you, and you'll understand that if you like him, I'll still be your buddy, and I don't wish him harm or anything. Both my parents are college professors. My dad's an intellectual. My mom's a professor, but she's more morally centered in the sense that she almost seems like just a very intelligent person that just, it was like a good gig to get out of a little town. But my dad and I were very, 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 very close when I was a kid, and he's an intellectual. And Jordan Peterson was, for me, the way to bridge moral clarity and the world of the intellectual. And as I got older and I became a father myself, it was very necessary for me to find that bridge where I could, because I was raised with intellectuals. Like, I was raised with this. And I'm a comedian now, but when I was a kid, I was a very serious kid. Didn't talk a lot. And when I talked, very serious. And people would laugh a lot. And this is one reason why I've been obsessing for years now about what makes people laugh. That's why this podcast originally started, called Why Didn't They Laugh? And I've been talking to Vox Day and Castelli House about possibly writing a book, Why Didn't They Laugh? Just an analyzation of comedy. And the reason I think he would be great with something like that is because of his literature and computer programming background, because it's very like engineerish. But anyway, I always saw that people would hide tough realities behind wit and maps of meaning, not to just use the book of Jordan Peterson, but like when I was a little kid, I remember my dad, who's a Democrat, and he would say like, the Democrats are the first to stand up for something and then the first to sit down. And they'd all laugh. It'd be a room full of Democrats, intellectuals. And I remember being a kid being like, yeah, but that's true though. Why do you guys do that? Like, the laughter didn't alleviate it for me. Another time, they were looking at this picture, and I may get some of the details wrong, but there's this guy named Sartre, and people pronounce it all different ways. I'm pronouncing it the English way, who's a postmodernist. What was his specific field? It was, I can't remember. It was like, hell is other people is his whole thing. It was, it's a type of postmodernism. I'll check in the chat and see if any of you guys know. And you guys remember? Yeah, Sartre. Yeah, but it's spelled Sartre. Sartre. I'm not going to say Sartre. But what was his thing? It was a specific. Do you guys know? I can just jump. Transhumanism? No, existentialism. So existentialism, his whole point was that hell is other people. And there's this picture of him standing on an iceberg, and it's this black and white picture that intellectuals fawn over. And as a little kid, I said, well, then who took that picture? And they all laughed and talked about how funny there's Owen was and how insightful I was. And they laughed and laughed, but no one answered me. I'm like, if hell is other people and this picture describes it, he couldn't have taken that picture alone. And that's part of the picture. How do you not see that? And so I saw the dangers of hiding behind comedy and wit to avoid tough realities. There's a video of Jimmy Savile, probably one of the most notorious pedophiles in history, this British pedophile. He had a children's show. He was knighted by the Queen, just real nasty stuff. And he was joking about how people thought he was a wizard. And he was. Like, he was like, oh, people say, oh, Jimmy, so blah, blah. And he's describing this joke. And then in retrospect, you're like, well, and then one of my dad's favorite jokes was many a PhD is an ASS, and he'd laugh. And I'd be like, so then why does it matter if you're a PhD, if you guys are ASSs? See, this is the contradiction of my father. Funny, has humility to him, really good heart. I love my father deeply, but this is what happened. And one thing about Jordan Peterson that drew me so intensely was saving your father from the belly of the whale. And I wanted to save my dad. I still do in a lot of ways, from his own mind, the slavery of your own mind when you're an intellectual, when you're very, very, very smart and you don't have a moral compass. An intellectual without God is a madman. And people will, and listen, you can believe in God or not believe in God. God, to me, I have issues with certain things when it comes to not feeling or seeing God, or I have issues with thinking about whether or not heaven and hell is even like real because it's so mind-blowing to me. Like, I have my own series of doubts, but that faith doesn't exist without the possibility of doubt. God is like, it's like seeing, you don't see it, but you see the result of God everywhere. Like, you see water, but you don't see pipes. You just assume there's pipes. It's got to be pipes to get the water. People that don't have that feeling, that can be their own master, always end up losing their minds, in my opinion. And my dad, when I was a little kid, he would sing opera and play piano, and he was in like local acting troupes and stuff. And my dad would always tell the story about when I was 5, we saw La Boheme, and I just turned to him and said, "This is beautiful, Dad." And he like got really emotional and really happy that he could relate to his son with stuff like this. And I always loved music, and we'd go see plays, and I was in operas. I'd play piano. I got into acting partially because it was something that he saw as so cool. And then I started seeing that with my success, by the time I became successful at acting, he couldn't enjoy it with me, because the problem with this world of your own map of meaning is you drift away from reality. And I remember once me and my brother were talking about this recently, that Dad used to say, I'm from this world, but not of this world. And at the time, it didn't strike me as anything, but now I'm starting to realize that, like, we have to follow the rules. Like, we have to have morality. We don't get to write our own, because then it would get to the point when he would lie about the time of the day and not realize that people wouldn't see that. And this is the thing about my dad, is he was really abused as a kid. He had a rough beginning. And what happens is people develop these hyper-intellectualizing ability when they're really smart and they faced abuse, and it fractures your personality, and it kind of makes you have a self-love because no one else is supporting you and people are hurting you. And he gave me a world where I didn't have to face that. And I'll always love him and honor him for it. And one of the ways that I'm honoring him in my own way, and don't think that this is, trust me, if I wanted to put him down or slander him, there's so many things that I could say that people would just be like, what? I'm giving him all the benefits I can, while at the same time being completely honest. This is the truth. He broke cycles of abuse with me and my brother that allowed us to see this, but he couldn't do it for himself. And so I thought Jordan Peterson could bridge that gap with me. And when I saw that he is also one of these intellectuals that has that self-master, self-God, self-love, and I don't know what causes it or where it's from, what I'm trying to do is save the next dad, like my next dad that's a kid that's listening to this stuff and not realizing that will take him into chaos. I don't feel the need to save myself or to hurt people. To me, it's like I picture it breaks my heart, because my dad is so kind and thoughtful and funny, but he used wit and comedy to hide some really dark stuff. And that, I think, is why I focused on it. So I just thought I would share that. All right. because being smart doesn't save you in any way. You become a slave to your own mind, and there's no worse thing you can do than try and create your own world. We didn't create the world. We didn't create ourselves. We're not our own masters. So that's basically what I'm trying to say. And I guess sometimes I could sound a little, I don't know if I want to use the word mean, because it doesn't really mean anything, but vitriolic with Peterson. And it can rub people the wrong way because they're like, well, he does do good in the world. My dad is professor of the year every year. My dad has helped so many people. He still is. Like, of course there's good in the world. Of course there's good from these people. The reason that I talk about it is not because there isn't good from it. Its base isn't good. And if you take that pill, if you take that poison pill, it's sad. It's so sad. And I literally pray that my dad can snap out of it and we can have like one of those conversations like we did when I was a kid, and we do debate and we do music, and sometimes there's a glimmer of it with him with music. Like we'll talk about music and he's back because the guy is brilliant. But when you're your own master, it's like you just drift away from any reality or other human beings. And it is the hell that Sartre attempted to depict. But see, the thing about Sartre, which is just like Peterson, is Sartre wasn't alone. He was giving you a world that isn't real, that if you follow it, you'll enter something much more hellish than what he was in when he made it. And that's crazy. All right, I'll get to the music stuff. I just wanted to address that because I like to read your comments. And a lot of you guys say some pretty profound stuff. Even if it's on the surface, it's meant to attack me. Sometimes there's some real truth in it. You know, there's truth when people said, it sounds like you have dad issues. And it's like, I do. It's not issues. It's not like this unresolved stuff. But I see a lot of my dad in Peterson. And I think that's one reason why I'm so aware of what's happening. And it's not that I want to knock down a man. It's that I don't want people to follow this path that took away my best friend when I was a kid was my dad. Like the person that I was like trying to impress with so many of my acting things. Because I wasn't drawn to like the silver screen and fame and stuff. Like I just became really good at something my dad was interested in. And it could have been anything. But my dad liked music and acting. And he would talk about when he was at Northwestern that he was in the acting program and how much he liked it. And so I wanted things to relate to him with. And then by the time I thought, you know, the whole, did I do good? And this is one thing about me, I'm sure some of you guys relate to this, is I'm susceptible to strong personalities because I am a server. You know, male nature in its pure form, in its best form, is service. You know, and it's been manipulated, it's been distorted, and it's all this stuff. But it's, did I do good? Is this good? I've accomplished something. What do you think? And it's not good for me to need praise to be paid for that. I should do it for itself. And these are things that I've worked on throughout my life. But to go to my dad and say, Dad, I'm like a pretty main character in a movie, on the movie, you know, sign in our hometown. Like, what do you think of that? And by then it was the dream was gone. You know, it was different. And some of his old students that got into politics were some of the meanest and most insane to me on Twitter. I remember when I was first getting expunged from Hollywood and the left, people would tweet to me, "Oh, I can't believe you're John's son. Like you're an embarrassment." And these are people I knew. This one guy babysat me when I was a kid, and he was like, "What are you trying to be like Alex Jones? Like attempting to hurt me?" And I remember just being like, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I'm going to look into this Alex Jones character." Because say what you will about a lot of these guys, free thought is what you lose when you go down these roads of self-God. You think that you get all the freedom in the world and you get none. When you say, I'm my own master, I'm my own creator, I can make my own meaning, I can make my own definitions, I can lie because I know better than other people. What you're left with is nothing. You're left with no feeling of pride in your family, no drive, no truth, nothing. You can't tell what time it is because the time is based on your need, not what time it actually is. And there's no human being smart enough to handle all the information and all the facts of reality to reassemble into any type of utopia in your mind. You end up broken. You end up without the very things that made you special. And the thing about my father is my father fought and beat so many demons to give me and my brother a life safe from the type of trauma that makes your personality kind of drift towards narcissism. And I will always respect that and I will always honor that. And so I just wanted, because sometimes I can come across as very aggressive and intense. I get that from my mom and I get that from my childhood, just being a very serious boy. and so that's where it all comes from. And I just thought that that would help you guys understand that not only do I not hate Peterson, there's a love I have for him in a certain way because I see my father in him and I see the mistakes. And he's much younger than my dad. Peterson isn't on a good path. And I just don't want to see young men, because the vitriol I would get from Peterson fans, like, kill yourself, live stream it, I want to watch you die. Like, and some of these aren't bots. I'm like, this is some poisonous stuff going on here. All right, so let's talk about